The sound echoing through the grand ballroom wasn't the soft music from the violin quartet or the clinking of crystal glasses. It was my mother-in-law's laughter, loud, sharp, and cruel enough to cut through every conversation in the room. People turned to stare. At the center of it all stood me. And in front of me sat a silver tray carrying a bill so outrageous it looked fake. $180. Oh. My father-in-law, Richard, nearly choked from laughing so hard. Oh, this is priceless, he wheezed, slapping the table. Did you really think we expected you to pay? Beside him, Evelyn dabbed at the corner of her eye dramatically. Look at her face, Richard, she said sweetly. Poor Clara looks absolutely terrified. Around us, guests exchanged awkward glances. Some smiled nervously. Others looked away. My husband, Ethan, sat frozen beside me, pale with embarrassment. He knew exactly what his parents were doing. This wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about humiliating me. For 3 years. Richard and Evelyn had treated me like a stain on their perfect family name. I came from a middle-class background. My father owned a small bakery. My mother taught elementary school. To them, I was the woman who trapped there. Son with small-town charm. Every family dinner became a performance. Every compliment hid an insult. Every gathering was another chance to remind me I didn't belong. And tonight, their 40th wedding anniversary celebration at the most exclusive hotel in the city was supposed to be the grand finale. Richard leaned back smugly. Well, he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Unfortunately, your dear mother-in-law and I seem to have forgotten our wallets. Evelyn gasped theatrically. Oh no, how careless of us. They both burst into laughter again. The trap was simple. They had insisted I organize the entire evening because I was so good with details. They expected me to fail from the beginning. But when I somehow managed to secure the impossible reservation, they changed tactics. Now they plan to order the most expensive items on the menu, pretend they couldn't pay, and leave me publicly destroyed. They expected panic. Tears. Humiliation. Instead, I calmly lifted my glass of water and took a slow sip. Then I placed the glass down carefully and looked directly at them. Don't worry, I said softly. The bill has already been handled. Their laughter stopped instantly. Richard blinked. What? Evelyn frowned. What do you mean handled? I turned toward the hotel manager standing nearby. Mr. Laurent, I said politely, would you explain the arrangement to them? The manager straightened immediately. Of course. Mrs. Bennet. That title alone made Richard's expression twitch. The anniversary package selected for tonight, the manager continued smoothly, included a charitable legacy clause. As agreed beforehand, the full amount of this evening's expenses will be donated directly to St. Jude Children's Foundation under Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore's names. Silence. Absolute silence. Evelyn's face drained of color. Richard stared at him. What nonsense is this? No nonsense at all, sir, the manager replied calmly. The paperwork was signed upon confirmation of the reservation. He slid a document across the table. Richard snatched it up. His own signature sat at the bottom. Weeks earlier, blinded by arrogance, he'd signed every form without reading them carefully. He'd assumed they were standard reservation agreements. They weren't. The room around us had gone completely quiet now. Guests were openly watching. Richard's voice shook. You tricked us. No, I said calmly. I simply gave you exactly what you wanted. Evelyn's eyes narrowed viciously. You think you're clever. I held her stare for the first time in years without fear. No, I replied. I think I got tired of being your target. Ethan finally spoke. Mom, Dad, this has to stop. But they ignored him completely. Richard leaned toward me furiously. How could you even afford something like this? I almost smiled. Because unlike you, I actually built something. Confusion crossed their faces. For years they had mocked my consulting work, calling it my little computer hobby. They never bothered asking what I actually did. Well, they obsessed over appearances. I quietly built a cybersecurity company from the ground up. And 6 months earlier, when Richard's investment firm nearly collapsed after a disastrous merger. My company had purchased a controlling share through a private acquisition. They still didn't. No. Until now. I reached into my purse and placed another folder on the table. Richard opened it. Then froze. Evelyn grabbed the papers from his hands. Her mouth fell open. Printed clearly across the top was the ownership structure of Whitmore Capital, 51% controlling interest, owned by my firm, owned by me. For the first time since I had known them, they looked afraid. Real fear, not anger. Not superiority. Fear. Richard looked up slowly. You? Yes, I said quietly. The family empire you spent years trying to protect from me now legally belongs to me. Ethan stared at me in complete shock. You bought the company. I turned toward him gently. I tried to tell you I was expanding the business. You never asked how far. He looked between me and his parents, realization slowly breaking across his face. Not just about the company, about everything. About the years of cruelty, the manipulation. The humiliation, the way they treated me while assuming I had no power at all. Evelyn suddenly stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. This is revenge, she hissed. I shook my head. No, revenge would have been humiliating you years ago. I glanced around the silent ballroom. This is just accountability. Richard looked like he might explode, but there was nothing he could do. The contracts were legal. The donation was binding, and the company was already mine. Ethan slowly stood beside me. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he chose a side. Mine. He held out his hand quietly. Let's go. I took it. And together, we walked through the silent ballroom while every guest watched the mighty Richard and Evelyn Whitmore sit speechless beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers, finally stripped of the only things they ever truly valued, their status, their control, and the illusion that they were untouchable.